The sky above the battlefield was red. Fire and smoke filled the air. Explosions shook the ground and screams echoed across the broken city. It was a planet called Orcs, and war had come to it like a storm. Princess Lysera, of the Zeralon Empire, stood inside a ruined building, her silver armor glowing dimly under the flickering lights. She was not supposed to be here. Royal family members were meant to stay far away from the war zones. But Lysera had always been different. She wanted to see the truth with her own eyes. She moved carefully through the broken halls. Her long, violet hair was tied back, and her four-fingered hands clutched a scanning device. Her guards had lost track of her minutes ago. The young princess had slipped away after hearing something strange, a soft human cry in the rubble below. Zerellans. And humans had been enemies for decades. Humans were said to be violent, dangerous, and full of hatred. Lysera had been told to stay away from them, especially human soldiers. But this cry, it wasn't from a soldier. She followed the sound into a collapsed hallway. Half the ceiling had fallen in, sparks jumped from broken wires, and debris was everywhere. Then she saw him, a small human child, no older than 6, lay curled under a metal beam. He was bleeding, his tiny arm crushed beneath rubble. His face was dirty and tear-streaked. His lips trembled as he whispered one word over and over. "Mommy." Light froze, her heart beat faster. She had seen many things during the war-injured Zeralons, destroyed cities, but this was different. This was a helpless child, a human child. Her mind shouted warnings. Stay away. He's dangerous. He's the enemy. But her heart said something else. She dropped to her knees and crawled toward him. The child saw her and screamed in fear. He tried to pull back, but he was trapped. His wide green eyes stared at her face, at her strange skin, at her alien form. Lysera slowly removed her helmet so he could see her better. Her face was soft and young, with deep purple eyes and gentle features. "It's okay," she said softly, speaking slowly in the human language she had studied in secret. "I won't hurt you." The boy trembled. "Monster." Lysera felt a pain in her chest. "No, not a monster. Friend." She looked at his crushed arm and the debris trapping. His leg, she had no proper tools, but she had her energy blade. She activated it carefully, slicing away the metal without touching the boy. He cried out in pain, but she worked quickly and gently. Finally, she lifted the last piece and pulled him free. He sobbed in her arms. His small body was shaking, but he clung to her like he had no one else. Lysera held him close and whispered, "You are safe now." She carried him to an old supply room nearby, where she found a half-working medkit. Zerellan and human biology were different, but she knew enough to stop the bleeding and bandage his wounds. As she worked, the boy looked up at her. "What's your name?" he asked in a small, broken voice. Lysera smiled. "Lysera, I'm Kale," he whispered. "Where's my mom?" Lysera didn't answer. She didn't know. The city had been bombed heavily. Most civilians were already gone, or dead. Instead, she said, "You are strong, Kale. You must keep living." The boy nodded slowly, tears still falling. Hours passed. Lysera fed him from her emergency rations and gave him water. She stayed by his side until nightfall. Then, when the sky turned dark and the human forces returned to search the ruins, she wrapped him in a heat blanket and carried him close to the edge of the zone. Hidden in the shadows, she watched a human search team move through the street. "Go," she whispered to Kale. "Run to them. They will take care of you." "But I want to stay with you," he said, clutching her tunic. She gently placed him down. "You will be safer with your people. Remember me, if you can." Kale looked at her one last time. The humans limping slightly. One soldier shouted in surprise and scooped him up. Wazera watched them leave. She didn't cry, but something in her chest ached. She turned and disappeared into the shadows. Years later, in the halls of the Zerallan royal palace, no one remembered the story of a young alien princess saving a human child. Lysera never spoke of it again, not to her father, the emperor, not to her guards, not even to her closest advisors. But she never forgot Kale. She often wondered what happened to him. Did he survive? Did he remember her face? Did he hate her for leaving him? The war continued for years. Cities fell. Empires rose. Treaties came and went. But in one corner of her heart, Lysera held on to that moment. The moment when she reached out to an enemy child, and he reached back. The moon of Trexel, 4 floated quietly in space, surrounded by silver ships and glowing satellites. It was a neutral zone, no wars, no weapons, no fighting. A place where enemies came to speak, not to shoot. Inside the massive crystal hall of the Peace Summit, leaders from different worlds gathered. Ziralan stood on one side, tall and graceful with violet skin and sharp eyes. Humans stood on the other side, strong and serious in their armor. At the center, standing between both groups, was Princess Lysera of the Zeralan Empire. Now in her early 30s, Lysera carried herself like a leader. Her voice was calm, her movements smooth. She wore ceremonial robes of deep blue and silver, with a high collar and the crest of her house on her chest. Her long purple hair was tied in an elegant braid. She had seen many battles since the war started, but she still believed peace was possible. That's why she was here. But as she looked at the human delegation across the room, her heart skipped. A beat among the human officers stood a young soldier, tall, with short black hair, pale skin, and sharp green eyes. He wore black and gray military armor with red markings on his shoulders. His face was unreadable, but his eyes were locked on her. There was something familiar about him, but Lysera couldn't place it. The human officer stepped forward with the others. His name was announced over the speakers. Lieutenant Kale Dorn, United Earth Forces. Kale Lysera blinked. That name, her mind raced. Could it be? Could this man be the same little boy she had saved so many years ago? Impossible, she thought. He was just a child then. But now? Kale stood straight and still, but inside his heart was pounding. He hadn't expected to see her again, not ever. But there she was, the face from his dreams, from his past, older now, but still the same eyes. The same calm voice, the same soft glow around her, the alien princess who had once saved his life. He couldn't believe it, for years. People told him that memory was just a dream, something his young mind made up during the war. But he had always known it was real. The way she held him, the way she whispered his name, and now here she was, standing in front of him. During the introductions, Lysera and Kale did not speak directly. The meeting was formal, filled with long speeches about peace, treaties, and agreements, but every time Lysera glanced at Kale, she felt something pull at her memory. That face, those eyes. After the meeting, Lysera stepped away to a quiet corner of the hall. She needed a moment to think. She didn't expect him to follow, Princess. Lysera, Kale said softly. She turned quickly, surprised. Lieutenant Dorn. He took off his helmet, holding it under his arm. His voice was calm, but his eyes were filled with something deep, something old. You don't remember me? Said. She tilted her head. Your face. It feels familiar. I was 6, he said. You found me under a broken building. My arm was crushed. You pulled me out and saved my life. Lysera's eyes widened. Your name, he said, was the first alien word I ever learned. I never forgot it. She stared at him, speechless. You told me I was strong, Kale continued. You told me to live, and I did. Lysera stepped closer. Kale, ... He nodded slowly. I never got to thank you. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The sounds of the summit faded away. Time felt like it had stopped. I never knew if you survived, she said quietly. Never knew if you remembered. I remembered. Every day, he said. A heavy silence fell between them. It was filled with emotions neither had spoken in years. Then Kale smiled, just a little. You haven't aged a day. Lysera laughed gently. You've grown, quite a bit. I should have. Moment of peace, both surprised by the strange comfort between them. But the moment didn't last. Suddenly the lights flickered. A loud noise echoed from above. Then dash, boom. An explosion rocked the hall. Shouts filled the air as security rushed in from all sides. Smoke poured from the ceiling. An emergency alarm blared. Lysera reached for her communicator, but before she could react, Kale grabbed her and pulled her down. shielding her body with his own as a second blast went off nearby. They hit the floor hard, Kale wrapping his arms around her protectively. Debris flew overhead. Glass shattered. The air was filled with screams and panic. Guards rushed in, weapons raised. Kale looked up, eyes alert. "Are you hurt?" Lysera shook her head. "No. I'm fine," he said. He helped her up. Around them, medics and guards were trying. To control the chaos, Lysera's advisor ran to her side. "Your Highness, we must get you to safety." But Lysera didn't move. She looked at Kale. Something had changed in a single moment. The past had returned on now. The present was on. Fire. Kale looked at the ceiling, then at the broken security cameras. "This wasn't an accident," he said. "That blast was aimed at you." She frowned. "You think someone is trying to stop the summit?" "I'm sure of it," he said. "I'm going to help you find out who." The advisor looked nervous. "We should let the council investigate." "No," Lysera said, her voice firm. "I trust him." The advisor hesitated but nodded. Kale gave her a small nod. "Let's finish what we started, together." And with that, the alien princess and the human soldier left the summit hall side by side, walking into the unknown. Not as enemies, not as strangers, but as two lives forever connected by one act of kindness, now ready to change the galaxy again. Inside the safe chambers beneath Trexel 4's summit hall, alarms were still ringing. Medical teams moved quickly, treating the injured. Security drones floated near every doorway, scanning for more threats. But deep in the royal wing behind, thick energy walls. Princess Lysera sat on a low seat beside a glowing bedware. Lieutenant Kale Dorn was lying, his arm bandaged, his armor scorched. He had saved her. Again, the second blast wasn't as deadly as the first, but Kale had still thrown himself in front of her when another wall cracked and nearly collapsed. He had pushed her to safety, taking the blow himself. Now he rested, silent and pale. As the Medunit repaired the bruises on his side and cleaned the wound on his shoulder, Lysera sat quietly. Watching him breathe so many years ago, she had been the one to carry him to safety. Now he had done the same for her. She still remembered that small, frightened, boy-dirty face, green eyes, whispering for his mother. And now here he was. A strong, calm soldier with the same eyes and the same brave heart. The door slid open. With a soft hiss, her personal guard, Captain Varney, stepped in, "Your Highness. The investigators found something." She stood. "What is it?" "There's proof the attack was planned from the inside," Varney said. "That someone smuggled explosives into the summit using diplomatic crates. Not human, not Zerlin. It came from a third faction." Lysera frowned. "Who we don't know yet," Varney said. "But they wanted to kill you before peace could be signed." Lysera turned back to Kale. "Then we need to find them before they strike again." Varney's hesitated. "You should rest. You were nearly killed." She shook her head. "I've rested enough for a lifetime." Later that night, Kale woke with a quiet groan, blinking at the soft lights on the ceiling. For a moment, he didn't remember where he was. Then he turned his head and saw her. Lysera sat beside his bed, a datapad in her hands. Her armor was gone, replaced by a silver tunic and a deep blue sash. Her long braid lay over her shoulder. She looked calm, but her eyes lit up when she saw him open his eyes. "You're awake," she said softly. He tried to sit up. "What happened?" "Phew. Got yourself hurt," she said. Again, he smiled. "Old habits." She laughed a little, then her face grew serious. "Kale, why did you do it?" "You mean jumping in front of you?" he asked. She nodded. Kale looked at her for a moment. "Because you once did the same for me." Lysera lowered her gaze. "That was a long time ago. I never forgot it." Silence settled between them, but it wasn't cold. It was peaceful, like something old had returned. "I became a soldier because of you," Kale said. "Not to fight, not to kill, but to protect." Lysera raised her eyes. "When I was small, I saw so much pain," he said. "But then you appeared. You were supposed to be the enemy. But you weren't. You were kind. You saved me. That changed everything. Lysera reached out, her four-fingered hand gently touching his. I always wondered if you were alive. She whispered. Kale held her hand softly. I am, thanks to you. The next day, Kale and Lysera stood in front of a giant holomap, showing the layout of the summit station. Lights blinked where damage had been found. Lysera's advisors, human officers, and several guards watched the display carefully. The explosives were hidden here, said Varnes, pointing to the lower docking bay. No cameras. Minimal patrol. Perfect spot for smuggling. A human, Officer Colonel Reimer, stepped forward. We also intercepted a coded message after the attack. It wasn't from any known military. Kale crossed his arms. So we have a third player, someone who wants the war to continue. Lysera looked at both sides. If we don't act together, they will succeed. The group nodded in agreement. Kale stepped closer to the map. Let me and Lysera investigate the docks. If this third group is still hiding there, we can find evidence. Varnes raised an eyebrow. You want to go alone? Lysera nodded. We'll be faster, less noise, no attention. Reimer frowned. It's risky. Kale gave a small smile. So was surviving a falling building when I was 6. I think we'll manage. Later that evening, wearing simple dark clothing and carrying small scanners, Lysera and Kale moved quietly through the lower decks of the summit station. The halls were quiet, only the hum of engines and faint security beeps filling the air. Kale led the way, his eyes sharp, his weapon hidden under his coat. Lysera moved behind him, graceful and silent. Funny, Kale whispered. I used to dream of this place as a kid. Trexelfor, the place where peace could happen. Lysera looked at him. And now, we're sneaking through it like rebels. He smiled. Maybe peace needs rebels sometimes. They reached docking bay 7. It was dark, the lights dimmed. Kale scanned the floor. Movement. Someone's been here. They moved slowly, searching the crates. Then Lysera spotted a strange container marked with no logs in the system. She touched the panel. It opened with a hiss. Inside were weapons, both human and Zeralon models custom modified, and marked with a strange symbol neither of them recognized. A circle with a broken line through it. Whoever they are, Kale said. They want both sides to suffer. Lysera turned to him. We need to show this to the council. But before she could move, a voice echoed through the bay. Too late for that. Several figures stepped from the shadows, masked, armed, and fast. Kale pushed Lysera behind a crate and drew his weapon. Blaster fire lit the room. Kale returned fire, covering Lysera as she used her energy blade to block shots. The attackers moved like trained soldiers, but their weapons didn't match any known faction. They're mercenaries, Kale shouted. Aid by someone. Lysera nodded. Then let's not give them what they came for. They moved in sync. Kale shooting with precise aim, Lysera striking with skill and speed. They weren't just defending themselves, they were protecting each other. Together, they forced the attackers to retreat. As the last mercenary ran, he dropped a small device. Kale picked it up. It was a data drive, back in the command chamber. The data from the drive revealed everything. A third faction called the Void Patha Group, made of warlords, pirates, and corrupt leaders from both sides. They had been fueling the war for profit, selling weapons, spreading lies, and now they were trying to stop peace forever. Lysera stood before the council, both human and Zerellan. We have proof, she said, and we have a choice. Kale stepped beside her. We can go back to fighting, he said, or we can fight together for peace. There was silence. Then, one by one, voices of support rose from both sides. The summit was saved that night. Lysera and Kale stood on the balcony of the royal wing, looking at the stars. You still think peace is possible? Kale asked. Lysera nodded. Yes, because now I'm not alone. He looked at her. Neither am I. No. They stood side by side, not just as a princess and a soldier, but as two souls who once found each other in the middle of war. and now, once again, stood together to change the future. The stars outside the orbital station gleamed cold and distant. Inside, the air was tense, thick with danger. The space station hovered silently near the contested border planet of Verex, a place neither side could claim without bloodshed, Princess. Lysera and Lieutenant Kale Dorn walked through the narrow corridors, their footsteps echoing softly against steel walls. The station was a hub for both Zirlon and human forces. But trust was fragile, here everyone watched everyone. Kale adjusted his helmet under his arm and glanced at Lysera. "You sure about this?" She nodded. "We have no choice. The Void. Path has hidden allies here. If we don't find them, peace will die tonight." Kyle's eyes narrowed. "Let's get to work." The search begins. The pair split from the official peace delegates. Disguised as security officers, they moved quietly through the station. Checking docking bays, cargo holds, and communication rooms, they questioned technicians, guards, and workers. Looking for any sign of the mercenaries or the mysterious Void. Path Group. Hours passed. Then Kale stopped by a locked door labeled Sector 9, Restricted Access. "The sensors show movement inside," he whispered. Lysera nodded and used her royal access code to unlock it. The door hissed open to a dimly lit room filled with computers, weapon crates, and communication devices. Kale scanned the room. "This looks like their base." Suddenly, footsteps echoed from behind. A group of shadowy figures stepped in, its faces hidden beneath cloaks. "We've been expecting you," a voice said, cold and cruel. Kale and Lysera readied their weapons. But before they could act, a blinding flash filled the room. Captured when the light faded, Lysera and Kale were tied to chairs. Their weapons were gone. One of the figures stepped forward, a tall man with sharp eyes and a cruel smile. "I am Commander Vrax of the Void Path," he said. "You have meddled in our plans for too long." Lysera glared. "You won't stop." "Peace," Vrax laughed. "Peace is weakness. War is strength. And the galaxy belongs to those with power." Kale struggled. "We won't let you win." Vrax's smile grew wider. "You will watch as your precious summit burns. Escape and fight." Suddenly, the doors burst open. A team of Zirlin and human soldiers stormed in, led by Captain Varnes and Colonel Reimer. The mercenaries fought fiercely, but Kale and Lysera's rescuers were determined. During the chaos, Lysera used a hidden energy blade to cut her bonds. Kale quickly freed himself. Together, they fought side by side, moving with skill and trust. Kale's blaster fired steady bursts while Lysera deflected attacks with her blade. They pushed back the Void Path forces until only Vrax remained. Final confrontation. Vrax raised a weapon, aiming at Lysera. Kale shouted and threw himself between them. The shot missed, striking a nearby panel that exploded in sparks. Lysera seized the moment and struck Vrax with her blade. He fell. Defeated, the rest of the mercenaries fled or surrendered. Aftermath. Station was secure. Lysera and Kale stood before the gathered forces. Today, Lysera said, "We face darkness together, and together we will bring light." Kale nodded. "We are stronger united than divided." The crowd cheered. A quiet moment later, Lysera and Kale looked out at the stars. Kale spoke softly. "I never thought I'd fight alongside the princess." "Who saved me?" Lysera smiled. "Neither did I. But now, we're not just fighting for peace. We're fighting for each other." Kale reached out, taking her hand. "We'll face whatever comes next. Together." Lysera squeezed his hand. Together. The Grand Summit Station floated above the blue-green planet of Vorex. It was a place meant for talks, for promises, for the hope of ending decades of war. Outside, stars glittered quietly in the darkness of space. Inside, the tension was thick. Princess Lysera stood at the center of the summit hall. Her royal robes flowed behind her, and her eyes shone with determination. Next to her, Lieutenant Kale Dorn stood tall, his uniform spotless, his face steady and calm. Today, everything would change. The final threat. The room was filled with leaders, diplomats, soldiers, and advisors. They listened carefully as Lysera spoke. "We have faced war for too long," she said. "But war only brings more pain." Kale stepped forward. "We have proof that a group called the Void Path tried to destroy this summit. They want to keep fighting, to keep dividing us." A murmur spread through the crowd. Lysera raised her hand. "But we have stopped them, together." Suddenly, a loud alarm echoed. Everyone turned as a small explosion shook the hall near the entrance. Smoke filled the air, chaos. But Kale and Lysera stayed calm. Kale raised his voice. Security teams moved to contain the threat. The attack and defense, several armed mercenaries rushed into the hall, weapons blazing. Lysera moved to the side, commanding the guards with steady hands. Kale led the human soldiers. Fighting with skill and courage, bullets flew, energy shields flared, and the air filled with the sounds of battle. But the defenders were strong. Together, humans and Zeralons pushed back the attackers. The speech that changed everything after the fight ended, and the attackers were captured. The room fell silent. Lysera stepped onto the raised platform, her voice steady and clear. "I once saved a human child during the war," she said, looking directly at Kale. Kale nodded, standing beside her. "That child grew up to be a brave soldier. Today he stands with me not as an enemy, but as a friend." She turned to the crowd. "This story is proof that peace is possible, that kindness can cross even the deepest divides." Her words touched many hearts. Leaders nodded, and diplomats whispered to each other. A new beginning, the council voted. The war would end. A new treaty was signed. Human and Zarellan flags flew side by side. Kale was offered a new role as ambassador to the Zarellan's empire. He looked at Lysera. "I will do everything to protect this peace." She smiled, "And I will stand with you." Future together days later. Kale and Lysera walked through the gardens of the royal palace. Alien flowers bloomed in colors humans had never seen. Children of both species played together. Kale looked at Lysera. "Do you think the world can truly change?" She took his hand. "It already has, because we chose to believe." He squeezed her hand gently. "No matter what comes, we'll face it. Together." Lysera nodded, her eyes shining. Together they looked toward the stars, toward the future, a future built on hope, courage, and the bond of two souls forever changed by a single act of kindness.